How well do you know Frank Gallagher from Shameless? Frank Gallagher, played by William H. Macy, is Shameless' most famous protagonist, or antagonist depending on how you feel about him. He's the father of the Gallagher children, but on more than one occasion, acts less mature than them. Frank cares about his children, but he's definitely not Father of the Year by a long shot. He drinks a lot, and is often shown to be in the attire of a homeless man. Even though he doesn't look like much, he's actually very intelligent, which is shown from time to time, even in his elaborate and illegal schemes. From the beginning of the show, we begin a love-hate relationship for Frank. He could probably be a great guy, if it weren't for him being such a terrible person. His logic for doing things doesn't always make sense to those around him, and to be truthful, his kids would probably be better off if he just left and never came back. But in all honesty, there'd be no Shameless if it weren't for Frank. Of all the Gallaghers, he is by far the most interesting. Because he plays such a major role in the show, there's a lot that we have learned about Frank Gallagher over the past 7 seasons, and I'm sure there's a lot more that we'll find out. We've come up with a quiz to see how much you've been paying attention to Frank and his antics. He probably doesn't even remember the answers to all these questions, but we hope you do. Q1. Which family member is named after Frank? In Season 6, Frank's youngest daughter Debbie, Emma Kinney, gives birth to a baby girl, Frances Harriet Gallagher, nicknamed Franny. After Fiona tried endlessly to get Debbie to have an abortion, Frank is the only person that is on her side, which is one of the reasons she named her after him. Debbie gets upset with Frank and begins to call her daughter Harry, because of her middle name, but she needs his help to find a way to make money, and she agrees to go back to Franny. No take-backs. Q2. How many children does Frank have, that we know of? In episode 10 of the first season, Nana Gallagher had an affair. It is revealed through a DNA test that Ian isn't actually Frank's son. Monica and her lesbian lover Roberta wanted to get proof that Liam wasn't Frank's child so they could take him to live with them. Lip and Ian caught wind of the plan and did DNA tests of their own. It is assumed that Ian's dad is Frank's brother Clayton, the guy who looks just like an older brother of Ian. So Frank's biological children are Fiona, Lip, Debbie, Carl, Liam, and Sammy. Q3. Which body part does Frank refer to as his extra passenger on board? In Season 1, Episode 5, Frank discovers that his extra testicle could be cancer. He tells the doctor that the extra lump is his lucky charm and it's gotten him 6 kids. While waiting for the results of his biopsy, Frank joins a cancer support group and makes everything awkward. In the end, he doesn't have testicular cancer and asks if he can keep it. Sure, Frank. Whatever you want. Q4. Which country does Frank end up in after Steve, Jimmy, gets him drunk? After seeing how badly Frank treats his family, Steve, Justin Chatwin, or Jimmy, depending on who's asking, decides that it's time to get rid of him. After Frank doesn't show up at home to collect his government check, the family goes on a search for him. Information is gathered and come to find out Steve is the last one to had been seen with him. Steve gets Frank really drunk and puts him in the trunk of his car and drives him into Canada. Frank wakes up on a park bench with no memory of what happened. Fiona finds out and Steve goes back to get him. Q5. How many times has Frank been married? Frank has been married twice to Sheila and Monica, even though he never divorced Monica, which technically makes the marriage to Sheila void. He had a relationship with Queenie, the mother of Sammy, but they never shared nuptials. After Monica comes back in town for the last time, she and Frank renew their vows to each other in the Gallagher living room. So technically, he's now a widow since Monica died at the end of season 7. Q6. Who did Frank attempt to hire a hitman to kill? In season 6, Fiona begins a relationship with Sean, the manager of the restaurant she works in. Sean is one of the few people that sees Frank for what he is, a mooching lowlife that's ruining his family. Frank and Sean get into a fight and Frank retaliates by trying to hire a man on a train to kill him. The man actually plays Frank and takes his money anyway, daring him to go to the cops. Frank buys a gun instead and follows Sean to kill him himself. Instead, he finds out about Sean's secret drug use and ruins Fiona's wedding with the news. Q7. Who is the doctor that Frank falls in love with before she dies? During one of his many hospital visits, Frank encounters a doctor who's been recently diagnosed with terminal cancer. Frank falls for Bianca and introduces her to a lifestyle she had never known, drinking and drugs. Bianca and Frank have a wild, intimate relationship, including having sex on train tracks and drinking a $10,000 bottle of alcohol. Frank and Bianca take a trip to Mexico and Bianca buys a gun to play Russian roulette. In the end, Bianca writes Frank a goodbye letter and walks off into the ocean to die. Q8. What famous basketball player plays Frank's black sidekick when he takes over Carl's rounds as a drug dealer? After Carl quits the game, Frank takes over his rounds and tries to earn some money from local businesses for protection. He goes to a barber shop and gets cornrows in his hair, and then goes off to find his first victim. After realizing that Carl's big, black friends were the main reason people were afraid of him and giving him money, Frank goes back to the barber shop to find the biggest black man he could find. Out comes Rick Fox, and he and Frank begin to collect their money. Frank, of course, tries to keep most of it but fails. Q9. Whose disability checks has Frank been cashing for years? Early in season 1, an officer from the Inspector General's office comes to the Gallagher house looking for Aunt Ginger, the rightful owner of the Gallagher home. Frank tells the family that Ginger is living in an old folks' home in Wisconsin, but later reveals the truth. She died 12 years ago from a drug overdose at a party and he had been cashing her disability checks the whole time. The Gallaghers go into panic mode to find someone to pretend to be Aunt Ginger so Frank isn't arrested on fraud charges. They succeed. Q10. Frank tells Lip the best gift you can give a child is neglect. Why? After Lip, Jeremy Allen White, found out that he was possibly going to be a father, he and Frank share a conversation where Lip basically tells him that he won't be the terrible father he is. Frank tells Lip in return that neglect is the best thing that you can give a child. Neglect fosters self-reliance. Look at how he and his siblings turned out. If it helps you sleep at night, Frank, tell yourself anything. Q11. How much was Frank's settlement money that he collected, and then spent, without remembering? Time and time again, Frank tried to come up with several different schemes to collect some type of insurance money even though he had no insurance. Instead of going out and getting a job, he tries to hustle the system in numerous ways. Finally, one of his schemes came through and he was awarded a hefty $121,000 settlement amount. What's a drunk, sometimes homeless, man to do with that much money? Spend it all in a day, that's what. Q12. After a night of blowing his settlement money, what did Frank spend the majority of the cash on? In a night to wait, what? Frank wakes up the next morning with no recollection of receiving or spending his settlement money. He goes back to his lawyer, who sends him to the bank, which leads him to a Porsche, and he starts to remember a little of the night where he went gambling and hired prostitutes. After thinking he blew all his money gambling, he actually found out that he won almost twice as much. He finally traced the remainder of his money, it went towards a prosthetic center for children. So long money.